So I clearly never intended on making another video about Matt Gaetz. I just couldn't help myself because a new news story's dropped from, of all sources, Fox News that can only be described in one way. That's pretty much it. First, an exercise. I'd ask all of you to think, when was the last time 534, that you can remember, 534 members of Congress voted one way and one single member voted a different way? That's right, 2017, it's that Matt Gaetz. And how interesting that right when he got to Congress, it was within the first year, one of his first major votes to not increase federal funding to go after people for the very conduct he's now being accused of having committed just before he got to Congress. It's a little too coincidental. But what's the new stuff in Fox News that made me have to turn on the camera again? I mean, if you look down below here, you'll see I have no subscribers. I'm just starting out. You can probably tell from the quality of the video and everything. I don't know what I'm doing on here. But regardless of that, apparently there were orgies involved while he was in the Florida State House. And additionally, they came up with some ranking system for some game where they would score based on their intimate relationships with fellow members inside the Florida State House. And they were competing, the guys in the Florida State House. Now, Joel Greenberg couldn't have been a part of this because he wasn't a member of the Florida State Representatives. He was the Florida tax collector for Seminole County. But the creepy part is that one of the women was apparently nicknamed the Golden Snitch in reference to Harry Potter. When you're being investigated for child sex crimes and child sex trafficking, referencing a children's book in one of your games doesn't really help things. But she was nicknamed that because apparently if you managed to have an intimate encounter with her, you automatically won their game. That's disturbing. Also, news has come out that he and Joel Greenberg together left a voicemail on a Democratic state representative's phone calling her the future of the Florida Democratic Party. Well, he might not have been far off because she's the first ever Iranian-American Democratic senator, or first ever Iranian-American state senator in Florida, and she won in a district that was formerly a Republican stronghold with a strong grassroots campaign. So she has a very strong following, and there's a good chance that she may be up in D.C. while Matt Gaetz is not. Also, and this is almost too bizarre to be true, Matt Gaetz apparently put out an advertisement looking for interns the day after it dropped that he was being investigated for underage crimes with children. I mean, that's bad timing, I guess. As an attorney, it's not something I would have advised him to do. But so the Fox News story introduces us to the fact there were orgies, and there's this game at the State House, and then there's another side of it where Matt Gaetz apparently wrote a book when he first got to Washington, meaning when he was just left Florida and had just apparently stopped being involved in the behavior that he's being accused of. And bear in mind, Joel Greenberg's been indicted because they have receipts, because these geniuses used Cash App and Apple Pay to pay women, allegedly, innocent until proven guilty, even Joel Greenberg, who's been indicted, which I should point out, the difference between the subject and a target of an investigation, the only difference is a target is after they've sought or are seeking an indictment, once they've applied to have you arrested. A subject just means they haven't made an application to get you indicted yet. That's the only difference. Are you getting indicted, or are they just still collecting evidence to indict you? So I don't know why Matt Gaetz is publicly celebrating being a subject and not a target. But the same receipts they're relying on in the Goldberg investigation and prosecution, since he's sitting in jail for violating bond, are the same receipts they're relying upon with Gaetz. So in his book, Gaetz laments how many people before him have had to resign or have had revoked their committee assignments because of intimate relationships that they were involved in, and then goes on to point out that Washington, D.C. as a city has more spies and prostitutes than any other city in America. And one of the rules he makes for himself is not to sleep with hookers. Like anyone's ever slipped and fallen into a prostitute before. Oh, I didn't see her there. and my wallet popped out, or my Apple Pay. What? It doesn't even make sense. It just makes him look even more guilty. And I'm going to have to revoke my earlier statements about Matt Gaetz keeping his mouth shut and lawyering up. At this point, he doesn't have to keep his mouth shut. He's already dug the grave. It's just a question of how far it's going to go. And the fact that Fox News broke this, and look, I mean, I'm an attorney in a small state. If I was to commit a crime, the police would have a field day with it. They know who I am. It's a small area. I can tell you that I don't need to make a rule for myself not to sleep with prostitutes. That's not something that I would accidentally do or think to do, unless, of course, he was actively sleeping with prostitutes while he was in Florida and then published a book saying that he was going to make a personal rule not to sleep with prostitutes. I mean, the facts of this case get stranger and stranger, and for Matt Gaetz, they just keep getting worse and worse. And like I said, you can tell from just looking down, I don't have any subscribers. This wasn't even supposed to be the point of my YouTube channel, but I just couldn't resist when this new information broke. And from all places, Fox News? Oh, man. God help us all. If you think I'm missing anything or you have an opinion on the matter, please leave a comment. Otherwise, everybody say a prayer for Matt Gaetz. Or actually, say a prayer for the poor girls who've encountered Matt Gaetz through their life. Both the alleged victims, the alleged underage victim, and people who he's left voicemails for and who've been unknowing potential conquests in some bizarre game that he had arranged while he was a member of the Florida State House. Creepy Gaetz seems like it fits.